much for doing this. Zac, you're the VP of revenue for both Sisu and Battr. For folks who've been under a rock and may not have heard of Sisu, could you share a little bit about that? And then Battr's a relatively new product, and so maybe share a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, Sisu, let's see, it's been, I think we're coming up on 10 years that we've been primarily focused on teams exclusively in the real estate space. And it all started with basically Brian, our CEO, comes from like a tech and a private equity background. But he jumped in and helped his wife, Spring Benson, who's an EXP team, a lot of you maybe know, helped her start building a real estate team and noticed that everything was tracked on spreadsheets. And a lot of you have probably had that same issue or have that same concern with your business, or you're running Sisu and it's not a problem, right? But we built Sisu to basically help you run your business like a business. We connected it to the CRM so you don't have to track, duplicate data. We can bring all the data into one place, put it on your agent's phone, turn the business into a game is something we're always talking about. You go to the gym and your Apple Watch shows you, how many steps you're taking, and you want to do everything you can to fill the circle so you don't lose your streak, right? We bring that same kind of fun and intensity to your real estate business, both for you as a team leader and for your agents. And then as time, progressed, it became a full-blown transaction management system. We realized that we have all the data about all of the transactions. So it really wasn't much of a stretch at all to do full transaction management on top of everything we were already doing. And now your transaction coordinators are working out of Sisu, who are your most attention to detail people. They're the one crossing the T's and dotting the I's. And so guess what? Now you have really accurate, really clean data in Sisu 24/7 because your transaction coordinator works out of there. We have eSign that we just released. That's just one more piece of the puzzle to getting more data and using that data to make better decisions, hold your team accountable, run contests, like so much stuff that we can do. You mentioned Battr. So Battr is a product we started working on almost exactly a year ago. And we built it as a very lightweight product that takes zero setup from you as a team leader, that we can just plug into your CRM, and it acts as your AI database manager, right? So really a lot of the concepts come from a very successful EXP team, Matt Smith's team. For those of you that know Matt, he runs database better than anybody. We were blown away when we got into his database and saw that his agents were like 95% compliant with what he expected them to do in the CRM. Wow, how is this possible, right? And we learned that it was because he had a VA spending 40 hours a week going into the CRM, auditing their smart lists, leaving notes for the leads that weren't handled properly, and sweeping the leads that never got followed up on after those notes were put in, right? He's been doing this for years. So his agents just know the deal, right? If I have a team lead, I either work it or it's going to go to the pond so someone else can work it, right? And so essentially what we built in Battr, amongst other things, is that, but you don't have to hire someone, you don't have to train someone, you just turn Battr on. It enforces or upholds those standards for you. And we've just created so much opportunity. Like, we find so many teams are just sitting on a goldmine of leads that their agents are hoarding. We get those out in the open where someone else can have a chance with them. And in addition to holding a really high standard, we drive some really cool conversion with leads that weren't getting worked. So you got to stop me, Brian. I'll just keep going forever.
No, what comes to mind for me is when it comes to accountability, I make the analogy of this. Imagine it's fourth down, fourth quarter, 5 seconds left on the clock. You're all the way on the other side of the football field. What play are you going to run? Mm-hmm. And when I ask that question to rooms full of people, everybody says the same thing. Hail Mary, Hail Mary. Put it up in the air, hope somebody grabs it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but wait, look at the scoreboard. You're up by 3. Now what play? What play are you going to run? Right? And my point being is, unless you know the score, you don't know what play to run next.
Yep.
And you might just run the exact wrong play, right? Mm-hmm. And that's a football analogy, but it holds true in our business. And so oftentimes the results that we get are because of the lack of accountability that we bring, and especially when it comes to a team. And most people think of accountability as a word that involves one of those little bats behind you that beating people over the head, right? No, I mean, you can let the numbers do the heavy lifting, because the numbers, they don't lie and they don't move because of excuses, right? The question is, how do you then bring that to your team in a positive manner? Sisu does the work that a lot of team leaders always meant to do but never did. You mentioned Spring's spreadsheets. I know teams that don't even have that.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of curious, because I kept having all these conversations with Zillow Flex teams, and many of them, some of the better run, more accountable and higher conversion rates, by the way, teams were using Sisu with an overlay on top of their database. And then I started meeting people who were using Battr, and I wanted to sit down and understand that a little bit better. So maybe starting with Sisu, and again, we're framing this in the context of Zillow Flex, but accountability and numbers are true no matter what the lead source is. Do you want to kind of share a little bit about how Sisu sits over a database, and what kinds of metrics that you see teams really benefiting from tracking in Sisu?
Yeah. So I guess I'll just share my screen. Maybe it'd be the easiest way to show some of this, right? You mentioned the scoreboard, and that's definitely something that we focus on heavily. I'm going to try and bring another screen on here. Let's see if I can get it to load.
Okay.
You see this Facebook post here?
Yeah, sure do.
This is now Spring's office. So instead of a spreadsheet, we call this the Great Wall of Sisu, right? And so when you walk into the office, right, kind of like the analogy you made, like everybody knows the score because it's published freaking everywhere, right? It's on the main sales floor, on 4 70-inch TVs. You can see in the top right, like we've got a little, see if I can zoom in a little. We've got like a challenge running. We've got some leaderboards. We've got our, core team metrics, and it's all just there, and it's always accurate, and it's always in front of everybody. In addition to that, they've got the same thing on their phone, right? So it's just like, it just becomes a part of how you operate. Like agents that are on teams that run Sisu, like they can't imagine not knowing the score. They go somewhere else, it would drive them crazy because they would feel like they're running blind. But it's just something that's so natural to a team that's running Sisu. And so kind of the heart of it is, some of these, there's so many reports in here. So, everyone kind of has their favorite that they gravitate to, right? But I'm going to run this. Let's see. We'll just look at the month, right? So this would be like a team dashboard, right? And a lot of you are familiar with maybe like 4 disciplines of execution, or I think most team leaders are familiar with like a yearly exercise that most of us do, where we sit down and do our business planning. We set our goal. Agent tells you they want to make $200,000. You say, okay, great. Here's our average. I'll actually show you guys the goal calculator, right? Here's our average price point. We actually pull these in based off of the team's actual numbers. So this is their actual average price point, volume goal, splits, average GCI, percent of business that's buyers, contract to close rate, signed to under contract, appointment met to sign. So all of the conversion ratios we bring in. So when you tell the system, like as an agent, I'll just pick one here. We're actually going to go off of this agent's conversion ratios now, but we could go off of the team or the whole platform. There's a lot of ways to do this, but when I tell it that my income goal is 200,000, right, it will spit out for me that, okay, you need to be gunning for about 420 conversations every single month, right? And so now that goal is so clear and we commit to it, and this isn't something like every team should, or most teams do this, but they do it once a year, and then the business plan goes in the garbage, and we'll look at it and laugh at it again next November.
Yeah, I find in one-to-one accountability, one of 2 things are going to happen. One is you're going to walk in somewhat blind to the activity level, right? You can see the results. That's easy to go find, but the activity level, a lot of people walk into those one-to-ones blind, and then they ask questions like, how's it going? And they're at the mercy of that individual. They will get answers that range from, it's fine, to, well, first of all, you have to understand the agent on the other side of this transaction is a brand new agent. They're ruining the deal. And ultimately, because people aren't taught how to have positive, proactive accountability conversations, they go, okay, never mind. Sorry, I asked. Try to smooth things over because they don't want that agent to walk away. and they don't want to create an adversarial relationship. But what I find is when you can boil it down to activities, right? Forget about the results, just focus on the activities and moving that needle. Because if you move that needle, we know what it takes to make real estate transactions happen, right? And it's conversations, appointments, agreements, and so on. And if you can focus on those dominoes one at a time, making sure that the conversations are there first and real, right? And real. And so question for you on that, because I was going to say, if you can focus on the conversations and make sure that they're real, the next domino is appointment set. And magically what you'll see is that domino starts to go up if you get the first one right.
Yeah.
But question for you about conversations. I know you integrate with a lot of different products. Are these self-reported, or are they pulled from like FUB? I know tracks, conversations over 2 minutes or longer, or does it do both?
So we let our clients decide what their definition of a conversation is. We have a lot of teams running Follow-Up Boss, and a lot of them will just stick with the default Follow-Up Boss definition, which is a connected call of 120 seconds using your Follow-Up Boss number, and they do not allow self-reported calls, because if it's not in the CRM, it didn't happen, and you should use the CRM, right? That is like the line that a lot of our teams have drawn, and maybe takes a little getting used to if that's not what you're used to right now. But man, it becomes so effective because it just simplifies everything. We have a lot of different settings though that you can tweak. We can allow self-logged calls in the CRM. We can even allow directly reported into Sisu on your mobile app. We can restrict conversations from certain lead stages. So if you're calling one of your pending clients every day, that's not going to count as a conversation, right? That is a setting that many of our teams will turn on. End of the day, it comes down to how you want to track it. And I actually don't worry too much about it being gamed, even if you give more flexibility to self-report, because it always shows up. It's always so obvious. I remember in our early days, Brian, our CEO, was coaching an agent, and he's like, I have 500 conversations, and he's looking at the dashboard like, dude, you set like one appointment. So either you're the worst agent of all time, or these are garbage conversations, right? Because one thing that's very, I think, helpful in Sisu is all of the appointments have names behind them, right? So you can't fake an appointment. We require that it has a name and a date of the actual, I didn't mean to close that, of the actual person that you met with. So you're not going to be able to game appointments, and if you're gaming conversations, then it's just going to be so painfully obvious, right? So,
yeah,
long way to answer your question, Brian. There's a lot of flexibility there.
No, and that's the thing. You look at the metrics on the screen right now, and what you see are there's a ton of other metrics in between each of these dominoes, right? For example, buyer signed. Okay, how many homes did we tour? How many offers did we put in? Right? There's a lot of other stuff that you could track. In my past and in coaching, what I found is the more you can boil it down, the better you can get at having conversations around them. And you're going to have your primary metrics, and then you'll have secondary metrics. And what I mean is, for example, if they're having conversations, but the appointment set is not there, to your point, either one, they're lying about the conversations, or two, there's a skill issue there. And we need to focus on the setting of the appointment and getting the information that's necessary versus trying to get too much on that first initial phone call, all those kinds of skills. And likewise, in between each one of these metrics, there are skill areas that you're going to find that there are opportunities when you don't see the conversion rates progressing like they should, that you can then dig in on that. But before you have any of those conversations, are you sitting down and letting the numbers do the heavy lifting? Right? Yeah. Because, your dear Aunt Jenny having, surgery next week and all that other stuff, that's going to weigh in, but let's talk about the numbers first. And then let's talk about dear Aunt Jenny and what we need to do as a result of that. So as a team leader, I'm looking at this dashboard and I can kind of see my overall team. I'm a big believer in group accountability, meaning being able to look at a dashboard and see where I fit in with all my peers. Am I able to do that via Sisu?
Yeah, for sure. We have leaderboards on just about anything. So you can set a date range, set a metric. And this is what many of our teams will turn into this, this rotating display. So it's just kind of something that's always top of mind. But yeah, and you can create custom activities, even like it's pretty endless what you can be tracking in here. And the date ranges you can track it over, and we turn it into this kind of leaderboard, setup. So
Yeah, it's funny is that as I interviewed some of our Zillow Flex teams and other team leaders about this sort of thing, I asked the question: is everybody fully aware of where they fit in on key metrics with everybody else? And in a lot of Zillow Flex teams, they of course use FUB, and they'll say, well, yeah, you can go in there and see where you are on certain things, Sisu as well. But my point is, no, are you purposefully in a group setting looking at that? Mm-hmm. And what some of them will say is, I'm afraid of what that will do to the individuals at the bottom of that list. Right? I'm afraid of the dynamic it will create. And what's interesting about that is nobody said don't love on those people. Nobody said that person at the bottom of the list, you shouldn't say, Zach, oh my God, you were supposed to have done 10, you only did 1, but holy cow, you did 0 the past 3 weeks in a row. Congratulations, buddy. That's awesome. Tell us about it. And let you have your moment in the sun for doing more than you've been doing. And that's a facetious example, but understand, I had a mentor who said, catch them doing something good. Yeah. Catch them doing something good, right? Catch them in that moment. It's positive reinforcement. This is basic B.F. Skinner psychology. And so to have this kind of leaderboard and make sure everybody is aware that they're staring at the same thing. If I'm on a team, I know I have a purview as a, EXP University, and we use this in FastCap, but on a team, am I able to look at the people as a team member? Am I able to see everybody on the leaderboard on a team?
Yeah, super transparent. You can pull up your app at any time and see it. Basically, any metric, there's certain things, like just like anything, you can configure it, restrict if you want. But we're always promoting more transparency, let your agent see more of the business. And by default, any agent can see any leaderboard and just see how they stack up with the rest of the team. So.
Yeah. And so as a team leader, the question would be, are you taking advantage of that? Right. Yeah. Whether you're using a Lotus 123 spreadsheet from 1987, or you're using a better product like this that overlays and automatically creates that stuff, are you giving that visibility to your team and again, having those dialogues with everybody on the team about it? Okay, so it seems like with Sisu, I can plug in my database as a team leader. That could be Zillow Flex, FUB, or it could just be whatever database. I know you guys do integrations with a lot of the databases, especially the ones that we use as CRM of choice. Anything else that you think is really important for team leaders to understand about Sisu before I ask you about Battr?
I think that the magic of it is in how it's going to streamline your workflows, because most people will look at the bit, and even like when I started talking about this, they'll say, the problem is that I track my numbers on a spreadsheet and I need something that looks prettier, right? But that's actually not the problem. Like, the problem is that your natural business processes don't create this reporting naturally. So somebody has to take the time to then go put, it doesn't matter if they're putting it into a spreadsheet or Sisu, it's the fact that somebody has to manually think about it, which introduces human error. There's a lag on getting accurate data, and it's just not efficient at all. And you stack this up as you scale your transaction count and it starts to break, right? So with Sisu, we're going to connect your CRM, right? You're going to connect, we can connect with SkySlope on the back end and push data there too as an EXP client, right? You can take advantage of that. Data is never being entered twice, and as it's being worked on, it's creating the reporting that you need. And that's financials, lead source ROI, the type of stuff we're looking at here, like deep, like profit loss type stuff that we haven't even gotten into today. And so people look at the dashboard, they're like, oh man, that's beautiful, that's what I want. But the bigger benefit is that you're just going to have that all the time. And I'll give you an example. We do these events all the time with Spring's team. People come out to Salt Lake and they want to learn about Sisu and kind of see how it all got started. Her team doesn't spend 3 minutes making sure that their Sisu is accurate when 100 teams are going to be tearing it apart, right? It is always accurate without anybody thinking about it being so. So, yeah, that's
yeah. And I think this is the reason why a lot of teams don't have these conversations, is because I don't know if anybody's told you, Zach, real estate professionals, we like shiny objects, and any shiny object that comes along will take our attention off the other systems that we've already set up in our business. Mm-hmm. And that's why, it's like management by the newest thing, and that can be really confusing, and also allow people to kind of hide in the cracks, so to speak. Sure. All right, so I'm pretty familiar with Sisu, just given my history of working with you guys in other lives, and also what we've done with Fast Cap and Fast Attract here in the university with EXP. But I'm not as familiar with Battr. How does that kind of fit into the picture here?
Yeah, so Battr is it's a separate product. It works very well with Sisu, but it can work completely standalone. Today, it's only integrated with Follow Up Boss. We do have other integrations planned, but I'll Follow Up Boss today. And really what we're after is creating very high accountability in your CRM database without you even having to think about it. And so something we say over and over again, and a lot of these flex teams have started to adopt, and it's what's really driving conversion for them. We say the list is the strategy, right? And what we're after is a system that is so simple as an agent that I log in, I've got a list of leads that need to be called or updated. I do the work, and as long as I do the work, I'm good. But if the work isn't being done, right, then we're going to take the lead away because it is a team lead, right? And we're going to send it to a pond, we're going to give it to an ISA, we're going to give somebody else a shot with that lead, right? And so basically what it turns into is when you're talking to and training your agents, there really is no training. You just say, just call your list, right? There's nothing else to think about. When I don't have
sign behind you, by the way.
I got so sick of saying it, I had to put a sign on, because it's like literally like we'll do trainings and I just point at the sign and it's like, okay, we're done, right? Like that's how you use the CRM. And one of the reasons that that's so powerful is there's no, and can I just share? I'm going to show Follow Up Boss real quick.
Yeah, please.
Show what this looks like.
Yeah.
A lot of us maybe have an expectation around new leads, right? Hey, I want you to call new leads every day. And once you get in contact with them, either update the stage or drop them. But if you have a lead that is in new lead status, it needs to be called every day, right? And that's like, okay, you can give that to an agent and expect them to bank that with the rest of the expectations you have and hope they do it. Or I can make it cut and dry and simple where everything that hasn't been called today shows up on a new lead smart list. A lot of you that are running FUB are very familiar with smart lists, right? And if it hasn't been called, it's here. And I either need to call it or I need to update the stage, right? And then I move on. What's our expectation with current clients? Well, we want to talk to them every 7 days, right? If somebody's 0 to 3 months out, we want to talk to them every 7 days as well. If they're 3 to 6 months out, we're going to talk to them every 14 days, right? If they're 6 to 12 months out, we're going to talk to them every 28 days, right? So there's no room for misunderstanding my expectations. They're all reflected in these lists. And the only thing I have to think about as an agent is get in the CRM and work the list. And that just takes, rather than thinking about management, I can now focus more on my skill set and what do I say and how do I actually convert these leads. It just eliminates one more variable, right?
Well, let's have the conversation about, the bad leads and all that. Some fraction of that is going to be bad leads. You name that 50% or whatever. But, that other portion is just people who are going to transact at one time or another. How do you stay in front of them? The biggest challenge that team leaders seem to face when it comes to this kind of data, as you mentioned, stages, updating their stages, appointment set, appointment met, blah, blah, blah. And then also to getting the agents to do long-term follow-up on these agents, these leads in an effective way. And for many of them, they face cherry picking of the leads, and agents who are just looking for the next batch of leads to come in rather than working what they'd perceive as cold leads. I'm curious, when you hear all that, how does Battr help with those two challenges?
Yeah, so we hear all the time, and agents think this, team leaders think this, that the Zillow Flex leads are just better leads, right? But they're the same people in the same market, like buying the same homes, right? Like they're not better leads. I think for two reasons they convert higher. One is because of the accountability that's put on them, right? Agents know and teams know that they will either work the Zillow Flex leads properly, or they're going to go to the broker down the street or the team down the street and give them to them, right? So there is a standard to having a flex lead, and Zillow does that to us, but we don't do that with the leads that we generate ourselves and don't have a 40% take on, right? Or 40% split on. And so that's one reason. But the other reason, because they do convert higher, worked exactly the same, a flex lead typically will convert higher. But the other reason is because the portals, right? Zillow in this case, they're doing the nurturing for you, right? They're carrying the lead over a much longer time and giving it to you when it's closer to ready. And most agents and teams either are not willing to, or are not set up to, or not organized enough to be able to carry those longer term nurtures. But if you carry those longer term nurtures instead of the portal carrying it for you, right, you would have that same type of conversion. And so I totally agree with you, Brian. Like all of the money, and we've done this when we start up someone with Battr, we pull 6 months worth of data, 6 month worth of leads, and we look at the conversion, and everyone's underwhelmed, right? They expect that they would have higher conversion on the first 6 months. And it just goes to show all of the money is between month 6 and month 18. All of the money is in being able to carry a nurture for longer than 6 months, which is what most agents are not willing to do. It's what your competition is either not willing to do or not structured to do. And so this really is the secret sauce of any team, is being this organized and working off of a list like this where we can carry long-term nurtures. But it also comes down to there actually being some real standards and consequences to not doing it, right? Any standard without a consequence is just a suggestion, right? Can't remember who I heard that from. Definitely wasn't me, but I thought it was really smart, right? Because your agent, like most of the teams we talk to, Brian, already have smart lists like this. Very few of them actually are getting high compliance on them because they're not being audited and taken care of on a consistent basis, right? And that's essentially what Battr does here. Is we will go in and audit, and this is one of our teams, and you look at how compliant their lists are, right? Again, we're carrying 270 weekly nurtures. 95% of those are being worked properly. 1% is at risk. That means we went in and left a little mention to the agent, said, hey, this thing's at risk. And 11 are neglected, which actually means we just swept those to the pond because we gave you a chance. It showed up on your list. 3 days later, you had called it. We gave you a no. 3 days later, we swept it to the pond. And now agents who have earned the right to work that pond because of their effort or their conversion, they're jumping into that pond and converting it all day long, right? You had someone who was hot. You put them into hot. You didn't take care of them. Someone else on our team is taking care of them, which is better than someone in another brokerage taking care of them, right? And so This is essentially what Battr is doing, is saying, all right, you've got this strategy with these lists. Now there's some real teeth behind it to where agents actually know, all right, I got to log in and work my list or someone else is going to get my leads. And over time, the teams that run this isn't like, it's just like second nature. This is just how it works. Of course, if I'm taking a lead from the team, there's going to be a standard around how I work it, right? It's not unreasonable in any way, right?
That's a really, really big range. And so you start asking the question of like, okay, when you look at the team, by the way, they told me 5, lo and behold, I mentioned the 6 to 15% conversion rates. Where do you think they were? And it was the 15%. And so this idea of like, they just need more leads. They just need more leads. No, they don't. No, they don't. They just need more accountability around this and the opportunity to work those leads properly. And it all boils down to fear. And the fear is I've got more leads than agents, and I don't want to tick those agents off and have them go away or have them tell me I don't want any more Zillow leads or whatever leads. And my point is, do you know who's not going to object to your standards? the next agent that you attract to your team, because they're just going to assume that's how things roll. And so never letting today's team member deter you from doing the things that you need to do for tomorrow's team leader. And always coming at it not as a draconian, hey, you're a bad person, and therefore we're taking these leads away. My kids are all 4 of them were Montessori kids. And so in my house, we don't punish. We don't punish. We simply take away privileges. Privileges are earned. You get things when you do things. And if you don't do those things, then you don't get those things until you do. And you look at some of the best run Zillow Flex teams, and here my mind goes to like the Omni K2 group with Christina and Nate and that team. They have certain standards. And if you don't adhere to those standards, they'll pull you off the lead flow until you right the wrong. And that could be as simple as like a day, it could be as simple as a week, it may be 4 weeks, depending upon the metric we're talking about. But in all cases, they allow you to go back and work this pool. They're not taking away opportunities for you. They're just making sure that we're following up on the opportunities we have. And so I like that idea of incorporating that as a technological solve. Hey, it's not me. It's just the way the system is designed. You want the lead, follow up with the lead. And if you don't, it's got to go to somebody else who will.
We get a lot of teams. So for a couple, I'm going like a full-on rant. There's so much stuff that I want to talk about here.
Go.
One, we find that chronically teams are trying to work way too much of their database by their agents, right? And so I'll use Matt Smith's team is a really good example of how I think database should be ran. And he's not even he's one of the few teams out there that is not on Flex that's routinely doing 700-800 deals, no Flex, right? He has a database of 70,000. And about 2,000 of those leads are being worked by agents, right? That's not even it's like not even 5%, right? And we'll find databases of 40,000 where 10,000 of those leads are in the agent's name. And so agents almost chronically trying to work way too many leads where they're trying to take care of 400 leads, and the 325 that they actually don't really care about are actually distracting them from the 75 that could be converting, right? And so I think chronically teams and agents are trying to work too many leads, and they need less leads, but they need to work the leads they have harder and better. And that's the difference with Matt, right? His less than 5% of his database in an agent's name, but every single one of those leads is taken care of perfectly to his standards, because if they're not, we're sweeping them to a pond, right? And so every lead every lead is the standard is being held 100% of the time. And that's the other thing I really wanted to talk about, that I think people come in and they're nervous about putting like this hardcore of a standard on and sweeping leads or pausing people on lead flow, because they've tried it in the past and people got upset and people's feelings got hurt. But the friction of any of this, pausing leads, sweeping leads, comes from not being consistent with it, right? So you tell your agents, hey, I expect leads to be called 10 times in the first 10 days, right? And, it floats out there and everyone hears you and they're like, okay, cool, that's the expectation. But, and for the first month, you do take the leads away. But then in month 2, you're on to the next shiny object. And so you let a couple people slide, and now they're starting to learn like, okay, well, that was just a flavor of the month last month, right? And now I'm seeing that I'm getting away with some of these leads. And then all of a sudden one day the team lead wakes up or the director of ops wakes up and they take a lead from you. And it's like, wait a sec, did you just wake up on the wrong side of the bed? You decided to take this lead from me because I know this agent over here has the same thing and they're not getting the same from them. So you singled me out and now there's drama, right? Our teams that
you're mean.
You're picking on me, right? Compare that with teams because here's the thing. If you are the one that has to uphold the standard, you're going to burn out eventually, right? If you have to go in every day, audit the CRM and do it, and there's not a process for it, eventually you burn out on it and the standard creeps back into being a suggestion, right? The difference here is the system does it every single day. It doesn't care if you're a top performer, top producer, none of that matters. If a lead's on your list, and it's been on your list for too long, it gets swept to the pond. Now there's no drama. Like, Matt's team's been running this for 5 years. None of his agents say a peep about it. Everyone knows that this is just how we run the database. And in fact, the people who appreciate it the most are the people who are hungry, right? It's unfair to your top performers to let a lower standard exist in your organization around leads or anything like this, right? It's actually more fair to them to enforce it so that the top performers can be top performers, can have more opportunity because they deserve more opportunity, right? So there's so much to be gained by just being consistent over years with, this is the expectation, it's clear, it's right in front of you, it gets enforced every day, there's no questions. If you don't want to worry about leads, if you want to be on lead flow, just work your list and you're good, right? Try running that for 2 years and not varying from it, and the consistency just creates outstanding returns.
It's funny you say that. Some of the better teams do those pizza party call nights, and lo and behold, those dead leads, those cold leads, they sure do act like Lazarus.
They're gold. Yep. You shouldn't even need to buy another lead. If you have a database of 95,000, like, come on, right? Like, there's gold in there if you work it properly. You probably don't need more leads. You just need to work the ones you got better. So, yeah.
Hey, Zach, thank you very much for doing this, man. I appreciate it.
Had a lot of fun. Thanks, Brian. Always good connecting with you.